Welcome to the Podkey summary of Read Between the Strokes with PencilKit from WWDC 2026. This one is a pretty meaningful PencilKit update, especially if you care about handwriting, search, or building anything more ambitious than a simple sketchpad. Apple's adding on-device handwriting recognition in 29 languages, better ways to search and index handwritten notes, cleaner stroke identity and selection hooks, and some surprisingly useful low-level tools for slicing, compositing, and converting stroke paths. A lot of this is aimed at developers, but the bigger picture is easy to feel. Handwritten content is starting to behave a lot more like real, searchable, accessible text. The headline feature is PK Stroke Recognizer. It takes a set of strokes and gives you the single most likely text transcription, and it does that as an asynchronous Swift actor. So it fits modern app code without blocking everything else. Developers can also set a preferred languages list, which matters because handwriting recognition gets a lot better when the app can hint at the language context instead of just guessing from the void. As of iOS 27, it supports 29 languages, and apps can check the full list through the supported languages property. One little practical note: the simulator only handles Latin script languages. So if you're testing something multilingual, real devices are where the truth lives. And all of this runs entirely on-device with an offline model bundled into the OS, which means fast recognition, no network dependency, and support across iPad, iPhone, Mac, and Vision OS devices that can run iOS 27. What makes this more than a neat demo is the indexing and search side. There's indexable content that bundles together a concatenated string of all the candidate interpretations for a handwriting sample, not just the top guess. That gives Spotlight richer material to work with, so handwritten notes can be discovered more reliably, even when the recognition model had a few plausible reads. Apple's also telling developers to store the recognizer version, because when the models improve later, apps may want to re-index old content and get better results from the same ink. Then there's a search API that takes a target string and returns the matching stroke ranges. That means a drawing canvas can support actual find behavior, and it can hook into UI find interaction delegate. So the app gets the standard system find and replace interface instead of inventing its own slightly cursed version. This also lands as an accessibility feature, not just a productivity one. With indexable content and search, VoiceOver can read handwritten words aloud, which moves handwritten notes closer to typed text in terms of usability. And because search results include bounding boxes, apps can highlight the exact handwritten word and let screen reader users navigate directly to it inside a drawing. That's a big deal. If you've ever thought about how much information gets trapped inside ink once it leaves the keyboard world. Another genuinely useful piece here is path conversion between PencilKit's B-splines and standard cubic Bezier paths. .pk stroke path can now be converted to cubic Bezier and back without losing control point fidelity. That sounds technical, because it is, but the practical effect is simple. If an app already has its own Bezier-based drawing engine, it can still feed those strokes into PK Stroke Recognizer. So handwriting recognition is no longer limited to apps that live entirely inside PKCanvasView. It's a bridge from PencilKit's stroke model into the much more common path format a lot of graphics apps already use. Apple also tightened up stroke identity and selection in a way that should make editing tools less fragile. Both PK Stroke and PK Stroke Path now conform to identifiable, which means they get a stable UUID that survives transforms, edits, and undo operations. If you've ever had app state go a little wobbly after an undo stack starts doing gymnastics, this is the kind of plumbing that helps. There's also a Canvas View Selection Did Change delegate, which fires whenever the user changes the selection. That gives developers a clean moment to update controls, inspector panels, or whatever custom behavior depends on which strokes are currently selected. Some of the most interesting additions are the ones that feel almost like craft tools. PencilKit already groups rapidly drawn inks under a shared render group ID to create that wet ink compositing look where nearby strokes visually blend the way fresh ink would. In iOS 27, render group ID becomes controllable, so developers can decide when strokes should merge visually and when they should stay separate. That's useful if you want the natural ink effect sometimes, but need stricter visual separation for fidelity or editing. Then there's programmatic stroke slicing and erasing. Developers can provide a PK stroke path as an eraser, and PencilKit will slice a stroke into multiple independent strokes using the same masking logic as the user eraser tool. And through parametric subscript access on PK stroke path, apps can extract exact substroke segments that keep the original ink texture particles intact. That opens the door to very precise replay, annotation, or teaching experiences without flattening the original look of the stroke. The demo that ties a lot of this together is a multilingual handwriting learning app. A child sees an English flashcard, writes the Chinese translation, and the app uses PK Stroke Recognizer to immediately verify the character sin and give feedback. That by itself is nice, but the more interesting part is stroke order. By extracting substrokes, the app can replay the exact sequence used to write the character, so learners can practice the right order instead of just the final shape. That replay is powered by the new range-based subscript API, along with metal-based rendering optimizations to keep it smooth. It's a good example of these APIs feeling practical very quickly, not just sitting around as impressive framework trivia. A couple of guardrails came with all this. Recognition is asynchronous, but it's still computational work. So Apple recommends throttling calls to PK Stroke Recognizer, instead of hammering it on every pen movement and draining power for no good reason. And slicing large, complicated drawings can be CPU intensive, so that work should move to a background thread if you want the UI to stay responsive. None of that is surprising, but it's the usual reminder that smart features still need a little restraint to feel smart in an actual app. Taken together, this feels like PencilKit growing up from a drawing surface into a real handwriting platform. Your ink can be recognized, searched, indexed, navigated, replayed, and edited with a lot more precision now. And that changes what handwritten input can be used for. Pretty good week for anybody who likes their notes a little less trapped on the page. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.